The first day at a new school was always hard, but for him, it was harder. His skin was darker than most of the kids in the hall, and eyes turned the moment he stepped in. He carried his books close to his chest and tried to ignore the whispers. Still, the air felt heavy, like everyone was waiting for him to make a mistake. He had moved with his mother after his father's job changed cities. She told him to be strong, to ignore the stares, to remember who he was. But in a place where his face stood out so clearly, it was not easy. As he walked past lockers lined up like walls of judgment, he felt the heat of laughter behind his back. He kept walking faster, pretending he didn't hear it. At lunch, he chose a corner seat. He wanted to be invisible. But invisibility was not given to him. A group of boys in red jackets walked in. Their steps were loud, their voices louder. They laughed with confidence, filling the room like they owned it. Their eyes fell on him, the new boy. The leader smirked. It was the kind of smirk that promised trouble. They surrounded his table. One leaned close and whispered a word that cut deeper than a blade. The others laughed as if cruelty was a sport. He stared at his food, hands shaking, but his jaw tight. He would not give them the pleasure of seeing him break. Inside, though, a storm raged. His mother had always told him, strength is not shown in fists, but in how long you can stand tall. He reminded himself of that now. Still, the anger burned. Each laugh, each cruel word pushed it higher. He felt it like fire under his skin. The leader slapped his tray, spilling food across the table. The cafeteria roared with laughter. Teachers pretended not to see. The boy stood slowly, eyes locked with the leader. For the first time, the bully's grin faltered. Something in those eyes, steady, sharp, unblinking, felt different. "Don't touch my things again," the boy said quietly. His voice was calm, but it carried weight. The leader shoved him back against the wall, expecting him to crumble. But he didn't. He stood firm, chest rising, jaw clenched. The other boys laughed louder, pushing him, calling him names. But the boy did not fall. He stayed on his feet, like a tree refusing to bow in a storm. Whispers spread through the cafeteria. Some kids leaned closer, curious. Others pulled out their phones. It wasn't just another moment of bullying anymore. This felt different. This felt like something was about to change. The leader leaned close. "You don't belong here," he hissed. His friends echoed the words, their voices blending into cruel music. But when the boy spoke again, the room fell silent. "I belong anywhere I choose," he said. His voice shook, but not from fear. It was power breaking free, words that carried the weight of every insult, every scar, every memory of being mocked. The silence that followed was heavy, but it was not weakness. It was the silence before thunder. That night, he sat in his room staring at the ceiling. The fire inside him hadn't gone out. It had only grown. He realized something that would change everything. He was done being quiet. Done being small. If they wanted to see him as an outsider, he would show them an outsider they could never forget. The next day, when he walked through the hall, the red jacket gang watched him. Their grins were sharper, but their eyes held a flicker of unease. They expected fear. They expected him to look away. But his gaze stayed steady. He wasn't just standing for himself anymore. He was standing for every whisper, every insult, every scar carried by people who had been told they didn't belong. The war had begun, not with fists, but with courage. A war that would not be fought in shadows, but in halls and classrooms, in every cruel laugh and every quiet moment of strength, in deep down. Though he didn't know it yet, that war would change more than just his life. It would change everyone who thought they could keep him small. The hallway buzzed with noise the next morning, but the boy heard none of it. His steps were slow, steady, carrying a weight he had chosen to accept. He was no longer just the new kid. Something had changed the day before in the cafeteria. The laughter, the insults, the spilled food, those were sparks. The fire they lit inside him would not burn out. The Red Jacket gang waited near the lockers. Their leader leaned casually, a smirk plastered on his face, but his eyes narrowed when the boy walked past without looking away. The leader called out, expecting him to flinch. He didn't. He kept walking. That simple act, that refusal to shrink, made the gang restless. One of them shoved him hard against the locker. The metal clanged, echoing through the hallway. A crowd formed. Kids liked the show, and this was free entertainment. The leader stepped forward, standing close enough for the boy to feel his breath. "Didn't I tell you yesterday? You don't belong here," he said, louder this time, making sure everyone heard. The boy straightened, ignoring the ache in his back from the hit. His heart pounded, but he did not move away. "I told you already," he said firmly. "I belong anywhere. I choose." Gasps rose from the crowd. Some students exchanged nervous glances. They were used to victims staying silent, maybe crying, maybe running. But this was different. This was defiance. The leader's smile faded. He shoved the boy again, harder this time, but the boy's hands shot up, pressing against the locker, and he pushed himself back upright. His eyes locked onto the leader's. No fear, no weakness. Just fire. The silence stretched. Then someone in the crowd whispered, "He's not scared." That whisper spread like wildfire. Kids who once laughed now stared in awe. Something in the air had shifted. The leader finally stepped back, hiding his unease behind a laugh. "You'll regret this," he said, before walking away with his gang. But the boy knew the truth. For the first time, the leader had been the one to back down. At lunch, the cafeteria was louder than usual. Every table seemed to buzz with talk about the new kid who stood up to the Jackets. Some spoke with admiration, others with caution, and a few with disbelief. The boy sat quietly, eating, pretending not to notice. But deep down, he felt it. The balance had shifted. He was no longer invisible. Later that day, during gym, the coach announced a basketball scrimmage. The Red Jacket boys grinned. They lived for moments like this, an open court, an audience, a chance to humiliate someone. The leader made sure the boy was on the opposite team. The game began fast, the sound of sneakers squeaking on the polished floor echoing across the gym. The Jackets played rough, shoving, blocking, using their size to dominate. The boy stumbled a few times but never fell. Each push only sharpened his focus. Then it happened. The ball bounced loose across the court. He sprinted, faster than anyone expected, and grabbed it before the leader's hand could reach it. Gasps filled the gym. The boy drove toward the hoop, weaving through defenders, ignoring the shoves, the grabs, the sneers. He jumped, soaring higher than anyone thought he could, and with one smooth motion, he scored. The gym erupted. Cheers, claps, even shocked laughter filled the air. His teammates slapped his back. Even kids who had ignored him before shouted his name. For a moment, he felt it: acceptance, belonging, power. The leader's face twisted with anger. He grabbed the ball, storming down the court, determined to crush the boy's spirit. He charged forward, but the boy stood firm in his path. When the leader jumped to shoot, the boy leaped too. Their bodies clashed mid-air, and the boy's hand smacked the ball away. The sound of the block echoed like thunder. The crowd went wild. Phones recorded. Voices shouted. The leader landed, stumbling, his face red with rage and embarrassment. The boy landed strong, chest heaving, eyes locked on his enemy. For a brief second, the leader looked away. The game ended soon after, but the memory of that block lingered longer than any score. The boy walked off the court, sweat dripping, heart pounding. He could feel the stares, not of mockery now, but of respect. That night, as he sat at his desk, he thought about everything that had happened. He had not asked to be tested. He had not asked to be mocked, shoved, or humiliated. But now he realized something important. Every insult, every cruel laugh, they were fuel, and he was done wasting fuel. He was going to burn brighter than any of them could imagine. For the first time, he allowed himself to smile. Not because the war was over, but because he finally understood he could win it. By the third week, whispers followed him everywhere he went. At first, the whispers had been cruel, filled with insults and laughter. Now they were different. Some carried awe. Some carried doubt. But they all carried his name. The boy felt the weight of eyes on his back every time he walked into a classroom. Teachers noticed it too. Some looked surprised, others uneasy. The Red Jacket gang had ruled the halls for years. Now one new kid had made cracks in their control dot at lunch. A smaller boy sat beside him. His hands trembled as he spoke. "They push me too," he admitted softly. "They take my things, call me names." The boy looked at him, seeing the same fear he had once carried. Without thinking, he placed a steady hand on the smaller boy's shoulder. "Then sit here," he said. "They don't decide where you belong." The cafeteria grew silent as more students came to his table. One girl, then two boys, then more. By the end of the week, his table was full. Laughter, real laughter, not cruel or sharp, filled the air around them. The Red Jackets noticed. Their leader's face grew darker each day as he watched the balance of power shift. One afternoon, the leader and his gang cornered him near the gym. No teachers, no crowd, only the echo of footsteps on polished floors. The leader shoved him against the wall. "You think you're some kind of hero?" He spat. The boy met his glare calmly. "No," he said. "I just don't let you decide who I am." The leader's fist clenched, but for some reason he didn't swing. There was something in those eyes again, something unshakable. For a second, the leader's own reflection looked back at him, only stronger, braver. He stepped back, unsettled. His friends exchanged nervous glances. That night, the boy walked home under the streetlights. His mind replayed the moment. He didn't feel fear anymore. He felt something else: responsibility. It was no longer just about surviving. Others were watching him, drawing courage from him. He could see it in their faces. He could hear it in their voices. He could not back down now. At school, the next day, the tension grew. Teachers tried to restore order, but they could not stop the change spreading through the halls. The smaller kids walked straighter. The quiet ones spoke louder. The Red Jackets still strutted, but their laughter had cracks in it. In history class, the teacher asked a question no one dared answer. The room stayed silent until the boy raised his hand. His answer was clear, confident, not loud but strong enough to carry across the room. The teacher nodded, surprised. The other students turned, their eyes filled not with mockery but respect. Later, on the basketball court, he was chosen first, not last. His team played with energy, cheering for him when he scored, guarding him when the Jackets tried to shove harder than usual. For the first time, the Jackets were not feared. They were just players in a game. And for the first time, they looked worried. The leader tried to slam into him, to knock him down, but the boy twisted, moved, and stood tall again. He drove past him, scored again, and the gym thundered with cheers. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was a battle for respect, and the boy was winning it with every step. By the end of the match, sweat dripped down his face, but his eyes shone bright. Students crowded around him, clapping, patting his shoulders. Even kids who had once laughed at him now shouted his name. The leader stood apart, fists clenched, face red, unable to stop what was happening. That evening, as the boy sat at his desk, he opened a notebook. He wrote down words his mother had once told him. Strength is not shown in fists, but in how long you can stand tall. He underlined them twice. Then he added his own. Strength is also shown in who you help stand tall with you. The next day, he saw the smaller boy again. This time, the smaller boy didn't look down. His chin was higher. His steps were steadier. The boy smiled. That was the change he wanted. That was the war he was fighting, not just against bullies, but against the fear they planted. The Red Jacket gang still waited, still whispered threats. But now the boy wasn't alone. And the bullies knew it. The war was far from over, but for the first time the battlefield was not theirs. It was his. The hallways no longer belonged to the Red Jacket gang. They still walked in groups, still laughed loudly, still shoved kids when teachers weren't looking. But the fear was fading. Students began to sit where they wanted, walk without rushing away, speak without lowering their voices. The boy had changed something, and everyone could feel it. But the bullies were not ready to give up their throne. Their leader, humiliated in front of crowds more than once, carried rage like a weapon. He couldn't stand the way people now looked at the boy with admiration. He couldn't stand how his control was slipping. He promised his gang that they would break him. It started small. His books went missing from his locker. His homework disappeared. Notes filled with insults were shoved inside his desk. At first, the boy ignored it. He refused to let them see anger on his face, but he knew this was only the beginning. Bullies never stopped until they thought they had destroyed you. One afternoon, as he walked out of the gym, they surrounded him. No teachers, no crowd. Just empty hallways and echoing footsteps. The leader stepped forward, fists clenched. "You think you've won?" he hissed. "You've made me look weak. Now I'll make sure you never forget who's in charge." The boy said nothing at first. His silence wasn't fear. It was control. His chest rose and fell steadily. Finally he spoke, his voice quiet but sharp. "You're not in charge anymore," the leader lunged. His fist swung hard, but the boy stepped aside. The punch hit the locker with a loud crash, leaving a dent. The other boys laughed nervously, not sure whether to cheer or worry. The boy stood tall, his hands still at his sides, his eyes locked on the leader. "You want me to fight you," he said. "But I won't give you what you want." That refusal cut deeper than any punch. The leader's face twisted with fury. He swung. Again, but once more the boy dodged. The sound of his fist hitting metal again rang across the hall. Sweat dripped down his forehead, rage boiling, while the boy remained calm. A door opened at the far end of the hallway. A teacher stepped out, startled by the scene. The leader froze, his fist still raised. Quickly, the jackets scattered, pretending nothing had happened. The teacher looked at the boy, at the dented locker, at the silence heavy in the air. But the boy only shook his head. "It's fine," he said. The teacher nodded slowly and walked away. That night, he lay awake in bed. He thought about how close it had come. One wrong move, and fists would have turned into something worse. He realized something important. His fight wasn't just about standing tall. It was about staying smart. They wanted him angry. They wanted him reckless, but he would not give them that. He would win not with fists, but with strength they could not break. The next day, whispers spread of what had happened. Students looked at him differently again, not only as someone who stood tall, but as someone who could not be trapped. Even without throwing a single punch, he had made the leader look weaker. The Red Jackets were slipping, and everyone knew it. The leader grew desperate. He called his gang together that night in a parking lot. His voice shook with rage. "We'll end this once and for all," he said. "If he wants to act untouchable, we'll touch him where it hurts." His friends shifted uneasily. They liked the power of bullying, the laughs, the control. But this sounded darker. Still, they nodded. None dared refuse him. The next week, the boy found his mother waiting at home, holding a torn jacket. It had been thrown onto their porch with cruel words scrawled across it. Her eyes were full of worry. "Are you safe?" she asked softly. He wanted to tell her yes, but his heart was heavy. He hugged her instead, silently promising himself he would protect not only his dignity, but her peace too. At school, more kids gathered around him. They whispered support, slipped him kind words, stood near him when the Jackets prowled. He realized he was no longer just standing for himself. He had become a shield for others. And that gave him strength greater than fists or rage. The leader tried again to corner him during practice, but this time, something unexpected happened. 2 other students stepped between them. "Not today," one said firmly. The Jackets froze. The leader's power cracked again. He wasn't just fighting one boy anymore. He was fighting a growing wave. The boy walked away, heart steady, eyes sharp. The war was changing shape. It was no longer one against many. Now it was truth against lies, courage against cruelty. And the boy was not alone. The tension inside the school grew heavier each day. The Red Jacket gang no longer held the same power, but their leader's anger grew with every passing moment. Every time he saw the boy walking through the halls with others around him, his jaw tightened. Every time students clapped when the boy blocked a shot in basketball, or laughed with him at lunch, the leader's rage burned hotter. The gang's jokes grew crueler. Their whispers sharper, but whispers were not enough anymore. The leader wanted something final, something that would crush the boy in front of everyone. He needed a stage. That stage came during the school assembly. The gym was packed with students, teachers, and even parents. The principal spoke from the microphone, her voice echoing through the hall. The boys sat near the front with classmates who had begun to call him their friend. The leader watched from the back, eyes narrowed, waiting for his chance. When the assembly ended, chaos filled the gym. Kids rushed toward the exits, voices bouncing off the walls. The leader and his gang moved quickly, cutting off the boy's path. Phones appeared in hands almost instantly. Everyone sensed something was about to happen. The leader shoved him hard in the chest, sending him stumbling. "Here's your stage," he hissed. "Show them how strong you think you are." His friends closed in, circling him. The boy's heart pounded, but his feet stayed planted. "Why are you so afraid of me?" he asked quietly. His words carried, reaching even the back of the crowd. Murmurs spread. The leader's face twisted. "Afraid," he shouted. "Of you?" He swung his fist. Gasps filled the gym. The punch came fast, meant to humiliate him in front of everyone. But the boy's hand shot up, catching the fist mid-air. The sound of the stop echoed louder than a hit ever could. For a moment, time froze. The crowd leaned forward, eyes wide. The boy's grip tightened just enough to show he would not be broken. Then he pushed the hand away and stepped closer, his voice steady. "You don't scare me, not anymore. And you don't scare them either." He motioned to the crowd behind him. Students cheered, voices breaking into shouts. Phones recorded from every angle. The leader swung again, desperate, but the boy sidestepped. The fist missed and the leader stumbled. The crowd erupted with laughter, but this time it wasn't cruel laughter, it was against the bully. His power shattered in that sound. 2 teachers rushed forward, pulling them apart. The leader shouted curses, but his words were drowned out by the noise of the students cheering the boy's name. For the first time, the Jackets looked small. They no longer looked like kings of the hall. They looked like clowns stripped of their crown. That night, the boy sat in his room, the cheers still echoing in his mind. He thought about his mother, about the smaller boy who had once sat beside him, about the students who had stepped in to protect him. He realized he was no longer just surviving bullying. He had become something bigger, a symbol, a voice, a shield, but he also knew the leader was not finished. Humiliation had made him dangerous. The boy could feel it in his bones. A storm was still coming. The next morning, proof arrived. Spray paint covered his locker. Hateful words, ugly insults. The crowd that gathered around whispered with anger, not at him, but at the Jackets. Someone shouted, "This isn't right." Another voice added, "They've gone too far." For the first time, the boy did not need to speak. Others spoke for him. Students scrubbed the locker clean. Teachers raised their voices louder than before. The wave was growing, and the leader was drowning in it. Still, the boy's heart was heavy. He knew one last battle was waiting. Bullies never let go quietly. And when they came, they would come with everything they had left. That evening, he stood at his window, staring at the night sky. His mother stepped into the room, worry in her eyes. "You've been carrying more than you should," she said softly. He turned to her and shook his head. "I'm not carrying it alone anymore," he replied. Her eyes softened. She saw the change in him, the strength, the fire, the calm. He was no longer just her son struggling to fit in. He was becoming a leader, someone others leaned on. Next day, whispers filled the hall. The Jackets were planning something big. No one knew when, but everyone felt the tension. The boy walked calmly, shoulders squared, eyes steady. He was ready. He knew the war was about to end. And when it did, it would not end the way the bullies expected. The school held its breath in the days that followed. Everyone knew the Red Jacket gang had one last move left. The leader had been humiliated too many times to simply walk away. His pride was cracked, and pride was a dangerous thing when cornered. The boy walked through the halls with calm steps. Students nodded at him now, some even smiled. It was quiet respect, the kind that didn't need words. But beneath the surface, tension grew. The gang's whispers echoed in every corner. Something was coming. It came on a Friday afternoon. The gym was emptying after practice when the boy stepped outside into the courtyard. The leader and his gang were waiting. The sky was darkening, clouds rolling in, as if the world itself sensed what was about to happen. "Today it ends," the leader said, his voice low but sharp. His fists were clenched, his face twisted with rage. His gang spread out behind him, forming a wall. Students gathered quickly at the edges, phones raised, whispers filling the air like a storm building. The boy stood in the center, his heart steady. He had imagined this moment. He had prepared for it. He looked around, saw the faces of those who once laughed at him, now watching with hope. He saw fear in their eyes, not of him, but of what might happen if he fell. That was when he understood. Fully, he was not just fighting for himself anymore. The leader lunged, swinging wild, fueled by rage. The boy didn't strike back. He moved with control, dodging, blocking, standing firm. Each missed swing made the leader angrier, more reckless. Gasps rose from the crowd. "You're nothing." The leader shouted, his voice breaking. "You'll always be nothing." The boy stepped forward, his eyes locked on him. "I am everything you fear," he said calmly, "because I cannot be broken." The leader swung again, but this time the boy caught his arm, twisting just enough to hold him still. The crowd gasped as the leader struggled, but the boy's grip was strong, unshakable. He leaned closer, his voice low but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Your time is over." Then he let go, stepping back. The leader stumbled, his knees hitting the ground. Silence fell. The image was powerful, once feared, once untouchable. The leader now knelt on the ground before the boy he had mocked. Students erupted into cheers. The sound rolled across the courtyard, louder than thunder. Phones captured every second. The boy stood tall, not as a victim, not as a target, but as something greater, a symbol, a leader. Unstoppable, the Red Jackets didn't move. Their faces were pale, their confidence shattered. Slowly, one by one, they stepped back, leaving their leader kneeling in the dirt. The war they had begun was over, and they had lost. That evening, the boy walked home under the glow of streetlights. His mother waited by the door, worry written on her face. When she saw him, when she saw the calm strength in his eyes, she knew the battle had ended. He hugged her tightly, feeling her warmth, her relief. Later, as he sat at his desk, he opened his notebook again. On the first page, he had written his mother's words. Strength is not shown in fists, but in how long you can stand tall. On the second page, he had written his own. Strength is also shown in who you help stand tall with you. Now, he added a third line. Strength is when fear no longer rules anyone. The next week, the halls were different. Students laughed freely. Kids who had once walked with heads down now lifted their chins. The red jacket gang had lost their grip. The leader kept to himself, his pride shattered, his throne gone. The boy didn't boast. He didn't gloat. He walked with quiet dignity. He helped others, listened when they spoke, smiled when they looked to him. His presence was enough. Everyone knew what he had done, and no one could take it away. In time, his story spread beyond the school. Parents spoke about him. Teachers whispered about him. And students carried his example, knowing they too could stand tall. He had been mocked for his skin. He had been treated as less, but he had shown them all what true strength looked like. Not fists, not cruelty, not fear. He had become unstoppable.